China's economic recovery is on track, or so a recent slew of data shows. But just how valid are those readings, given seasonal distortions and question marks over the reliability of official indicators? Well, Jim Walker, director of Asianomics, joins me now. Jim, thanks for being with me. This part of the world, we get Chinese New Year and Christmas holidays in terms of distortions in China. How important is that in reading upcoming data?
Of course, Christmas shouldn't be important at all because it happens at the same time every year, and so
but
we
the
can
factories and all of that stuff coming out of China.
We can seasonally adjust the data. There's not much happens over December. The factories have shipped their goods. The problem is Chinese New Year because it really changes timing.
That's right. So for people who don't live over here, Chinese New Year doesn't fall at the same time every year.
Doesn't fall at the same time every year. So last year it was in January. This year it's in the middle of February. And it really means that we've got 2 months now of data coming up, January and February, that are completely unusable as regards tracking where the Chinese economy was over the course of the last 12 months.
Now, is that problematic? Because we're just getting that sort of thorough reading of recovery in China. Is that going to mask a lot of what's actually happening in the beginning of 2013?
It won't really matter to the China cheerleaders because there's so many of them that they'll take whatever data. If it's bad, they'll say it was Chinese New Year. If it's good, they'll say this is a Chinese economic recovery. That tends to be the way that things work when you've got somebody and a group of people who are really out there cheering for a country.
Okay, well then for China realists, when is the next realistic data point that we're going to get?
Well, the worst of it is this year it's going to be April because the Chinese New Year falls in February. It fell in January last year. It means that in March, when the data for February are released, it's really not going to mean very much. So we're going to be a bit in the dark up until April. And the interesting thing is that by that time, the stimulus programme, which has been the force behind this recovery, will be starting to disappear. And I think when we start to see numbers coming out after Chinese New Year is gone, they'll be much worse than we've seen so far.
So you're not a cheerleader, at least as far as China's recovery goes?
The corporate sector in China is in deep trouble. They don't have the cash flows to match their profits, which is unlike anywhere else in the rest of Asia and most places in the rest of the world. What's happening at the moment is that it's government stimulus and another credit injection, the same thing that caused them problems over the last 2 years, that has happened again just as the new leadership took over.
Now, in terms of the new leadership, a lot of this great data started coming out after or around the leadership transition.
Yeah.
So the good data that we saw at the end of 2012, is that real or is there some sort of building around it?
It's real, but the thing is that it's all about fiscal spending and it's all about credit creation. Now, of course, both of those have caused tremendous problems in the Chinese economy because the fiscal spending is usually on things that doesn't make any money or don't make any money over the course of their life. So therefore, it starts to freeze assets in the banking system. You get bad debts building up and you don't get cash flowing around the economy. So we've got more of the same thing happening in that respect, which is not good news for real companies throughout China.
So in sum, Jim, really this sort of build-up that China's kind of driving a lot of global growth, false as we go into the second half of the year?
It's recovered over the last quarter of 2012. It'll continue to do so over the first quarter of 2013. And then I'm afraid I think things really start to fall apart. We would expect the full year 2013 to see slower Chinese growth than we saw last year.
We're going to leave it on that note. Jim Walker, thanks very much for your time.